conversation of the Mujeres edition of Bomba Live, and thank you again, Ray, for giving us the opportunity, is about who inspires you, right? And the importance of mentorship and support networks in the Latina community. And so again, I've been wanting to connect with Judy and Dinorah on a platform like this to talk about our experiences as bicultural women of color, as Latinas, as New Yorican Latinas, and pay homage to leaders, and pioneers from our community, people upon whose shoulders we stand today, like Elba Cabrera, who we have the honor of having on the show today, and really lift those voices and our experiences. And that's why we approach Ray about having a special edition, if you will. So welcome again to Bomba Live. It's a virtual Puerto Rican celebration every Thursday. We do this every week. It's a showcase of talent, character, and perseverance of the Puerto Rican people. And so it really aligns with what we want to do, celebrate ourselves, celebrate, our mujeres, our poderosas, right? And so here we are. And so I want to tell you just a bit about myself, and then I'm going to go ahead and introduce Dinorah. So I'm originally from the Bronx. I grew up in Soundview by the 6 train, Elder Avenue stop. And I don't know how much I want to say about my trajectory, but in a nutshell, I was very fortunate to go to college, and and knew from the very beginning, in terms of my career, that I wanted to advocate for the Latino community, that I wanted to work in the nonprofit sector, and that I wanted to be an agent of change in my community. We grew up very poor, very modest means, right? And some of the ills, the socioeconomic ills that impact our communities in the inner city. So I wanted to give back, and so when I got to college, I saw, that there were so many issues, around race and gender and class and systemic oppression and systems that were impacting me and my ability to thrive, my community's ability to thrive, but that I hadn't really realized that I was subject to, right? And so I became really interested in giving back, but also being a voice for the voiceless, if you will. So I hope that doesn't sound, derogatory, but doing my best to amplify the strengths and the needs of the Latino community. So that's who I am. I came to Orlando, Florida, which is the new epicenter of the Puerto Rican diaspora. And it's been quite an experience as a New Yorican, as a Puerto Rican who didn't grow up on the island. But it's been great. Like, I can get alcapurria, surullitos con queso, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can get piraguas and limbe out here. It's crazy. And so when you grow up in New York, like, you're so proud of being Boricua, and you wave the flag, and you're absolutely like in touch with your identity. But when you come to Orlando, it's like a whole different feel, right? Because you just in touch with the alcapurrias, like, literally. But anyway, but there are, some interesting, I guess, experiences as someone who grows up in the North versus the South, and, politically, socially, all of that, right? So that's part of the conversation that, that I wanted to share in my experience as a Boricua now in the South, whatever. And so I work in activism here. I work with the Puerto Rican diaspora. I also work in the African American community with the university. And I just stay as active as possible. I try to give back to my community, and every opportunity that I have to teach someone what I know, whether it be life experience related or professional, I try to, reach out and lend a hand, or, encourage people to lean on me for advice. And I always love to learn from others as well. So, and I just think I really do appreciate when people take the time to get to know you and guide you. And I just really believe that mentorship is important in our community, particularly when you don't grow up with a ton of role models. And I hate to say it that way, because we have role models, and everyone in your life serves a purpose, even when you don't see the immediate positive outcome, right? But you certainly don't always see, folks that are getting their doctorates, for example. I think it's only about 1% of the Latino population. And you guys you women, you phenomenal women who are here, my doctoras, right? Judy and Dinorah will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe 1% of the Latino population actually gets.
Is it up to 1%?
Is it the 1%?
Is it up to 1%?
Oh, it's less. Okay, bueno. Entonces, well, so, I was being actually idealistic. so thank you for I guess clarifying. But on that note, Dinorah, love you so much. Mi poderosa, mi hermana. I met Dinorah when she was writing her dissertation. Is that correct? For your doctorate. And we met through Judy, who will join us soon. And she was interviewing me in my kitchen in New Rochelle at the time. And when we were done with the questions, and it had a lot to do with being Latina and, your gender roles and all this, right? And expectations and family. And she turned off the recorder and she's like, oh, you're my sister. Like, we need to hang, right? Like, we are soulmates in some ways, right? And so that's how it started. And so since then, we've remained in contact. Even when we don't speak for months, if there's an opportunity that I know of for her to speak, or for, if there's a job opportunity, or if there's an opportunity to do something like this, we connect immediately. And of course, whenever I needed to talk to someone about a serious, decision in my life, I'm reaching out to her or Judy. So without further ado, Dinorah, thank you so much for being here. Your family's my family now. They kind of inherited me, right? So a lot of them are in Orlando now. So we're almost like family at this point. Yeah. So Dinorah, tell us about yourself. Where are you right now? Where'd you grow up?
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Tell the world.
Audition. We're taking over.
Yes,
take it over. So thank you all for having me, and Zoe, to all of your points, talking about mentorship, but also talking about peer mentorship, because I really do think that's the group we've put together here, right? Me, you, and Judy. We really are the trifecta. Judy's in a university setting; she's in DC. I'm bi-coastal San Diego, New York, and I'm doing university work, nonprofit. It's film, television, and then you're doing all of the community activism work. And it really and you're in Florida, so you're at the South, and we are touching every corner of the country. We are touching sort of so many different aspects of our community's needs, wants, interests, and exploring who we are as a people and what it is that we can do to move us forward. And I think that's so important to have those networks of support. So sincere thank you to you for being that for me. I know you talk about me being a mentor or Judy being a mentor, but peer mentorship is real, and it's a energy that flows back and forth. So I think we just have so much all to learn from one another,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I hate talking about myself, but we'll do it. So my name is Dinorah, and most people know me as Dr. D, Dr. Dinorah Nieves. And as Zoe referenced, we know each other through the sort of missing link here. I don't know when we can get Judy in, but Dr. Judith Perez, there she goes. Is our girl, right? So Judy and I met in the doctoral program. At that time, less than 1% of doctoral degrees were earned by Latinas. We were the only people of color to finish the program that year. We were the only women of color, only Latinos. And it was a big deal because we didn't have people in positions of power that looked like us for the majority. And I don't know that people understand the importance of representation unless it's missing. And it truly has been missing for us for so long in our communities, right? So I think, I've spoken to colleagues who are like, oh, well, you can look to that person or you can look to this person. It's like, yeah, but to look to that person, I had to look over a whole bunch of members of my community that didn't have the thing I was trying to bring us all, right? And that looking over weighs a toll, right? How many people I had to look over to find the people I could look to for these particular goals. So it really was important for us to develop that, for me and Judy to have that sisterhood in such a stressful environment. And at first, it wasn't a sisterhood because we didn't get along. I know she was bougie and she thought I was hood. She would grow up in Club City. I grew up in a little private house in Yonkers. But that's life, right? And so we had all of these misconceptions about each other and all of these weird ideas about who we needed to be and what we needed to do. And as soon as we got to know each other's hearts, that just kind of fell by the wayside. And I think that's what happened with you too, Zoe, when we kind of became a group and we realized that we all share similar experiences. We're all facing similar needs in our community, and we want to be able to fill that for one another and see how we can make that void smaller and smaller for the rest of our community members.
I failed to mention how I met Judy. So when I was at Barnard, right in Manhattan, in Harlem, what they call Morningside Heights now. So while I was there, I think I was a freshman. It was 1997, 98, and I was the new president of Mujeres, actually.
Okay.
Newly, that's right. That's where the Mujeres edition comes from. Yeah, and we were like celebrating the first Latino Heritage Month ever on that campus, and setting up the infrastructure for the first Latino group on campus, which is pretty cool. And so she was assigned as my the group's advisor while she was at Columbia Teachers College. And so she helped me out tremendously. And like you said, just like you guys kind of had that encounter. I was definitely, and I still am, a diamond in the rough, and Judy knew her way around higher ed, and she knew her way around certain circles that I had not been exposed to. You know what I mean? So forever grateful to both of you. Dinorah, I would love for you to talk a little bit about what you do professionally, if you don't mind. And then we can ask Judy to also introduce herself formally.
Yeah.
And then, yeah,
absolutely.
I know you don't like to talk about yourself, boo, but come on, you're wonderful. We need to hear it.
So, right now, I do a little bit of a lot of things, right? So many people know I'm an artist, I'm a poet, I'm a writer, I'm a certified life coach, and a lot of my work goes into personal and professional improvement, and helping people figure out how to be happier, be healthier, be more productive. That's a big piece of my work. But I also will be teaching at City College in the fall, teaching about racialization and culture and resilience, which was my doctoral work and is how I met the two of you, beautiful women. And some of you might know, I also work as a coaching consultant on the OWN network show called Yalla Fix My Life. So I'm a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit everywhere, mixing it up and trying to figure out what are the best communities of all people, but potentially and particularly communities of color. Yeah. And my sister, Dr. Judith. So Dr. Judith, I always forget the Caro. Dr. Judith Perez Caro. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Oh my God, I just love you both so much. This is just so great. I love that we're doing this in quarantine and trying to pretend we're not in quarantine. I will just acknowledge that, right?
I'm not pretending, boo. This quarantine situation is good.
Straight. I got my chanclas on under this dress, like my chanclas. My chanclas are on right now.
Zoe said I can't talk about my booty shirts.
Oh,
leave that out, but that's okay.
It's okay. So I think you both said it. I'm, for the last 22 years, I've been working as an educator. I was on the phone earlier with a good friend, and they were telling me about all these enrichment programs that they were doing in high school. And I told them about how I almost didn't graduate from high school. Right? And so I just think about my own trajectory and why I value so much having become an educator. And it was because for a long time I was not mentored. I didn't have a mentor. I have an amazing, strong, resilient mother who always steered me in the right direction and always fought for me and always tried to teach me how to be a good person. But when it came to being in school, I didn't always have that. So, I think for me, I take so seriously that I had the opportunity to go to college and to go on to graduate school and then to go on to get my PhD. And then, the very first student I ever mentored was Zoe, right? I met her. I'm only 4 years older. I'm only 4 years older than Zoe. So, when I met her, I was just starting out in my career and I just felt like God, I'm a woman of faith. God plopped her into my life and was like, you want to become an educator? Here you go. Here is a mirror into your soul and go ahead and work with this beautiful young woman. Right. And so I did. And I'd never looked back. Right. almost 10 years later, I met you, Dinorah. And you're right. When we first met, I had worked on Wall Street for a number of years. I had worked at, in colleges and universities. And when I arrived to get my doctorate, I tried to treat it like a full-time job. And I wasn't trying to make friends. And then Dinorah offered me a ride home one night when we went to this terrible happy hour for graduate students. I'll never forget it. We were like the only people of color in the Bronx in a bar. Like on Fordham Road, and we were like, what, where are we? What is going on? And she said, you want to get out of here? And I was like, bet, let's go. And so she drove me home. And when I got out of the car, I thought to myself, my God, I think I found a sister. And I never looked back after that. And I think it's rare, finding true friends is so rare. And, I work right now at a university as a diversity and inclusion director. And, that has been my life's work. But at the heart of it, I'm Latina. I am the product of all the things that I advocate for. I'm a woman. I'm a person of color. I'm a first generation college graduate. I'm all those things. And also in my doctoral program, I had the wonderful, amazing opportunity to reconnect with a family friend, Elba Cabrera. And I didn't even know she was a friend of my family until we reconnected as an adult. So I just feel so honored to be the one to introduce her to everyone tonight, because I was doing research I grew up in Co-op City, for those of you who are from New York City or from the Bronx. If you've ever been on the I-95 going north or south and you see a whole bunch of big buildings, that's where I grew up. It's the largest housing cooperative in the world, and it's a planned community. And my parents were one of the first Latino families to move into it when there wasn't even a supermarket. My mother tells me stories about buying groceries in a garage, right?
Was that bagel shop there? Because that bagel shop is everything.
That bagel shop is still there, yes. And it was, it was supposed to be a great American experiment, right? You had Jewish people, African-American people, Black Caribbean people, Puerto Ricans, Italians, all kinds of things, all kinds of groups of people living together. And one of the other Latino pioneering families was Elba Cabrera's family, the Mondesiers. And so my parents knew Elba because she was one of the first people to start the Latino club. Like they have a civic association club. They called it the Spanish American Club. And my parents knew Elba when I was a baby. So here I am almost 30 something years later, and I'm doing research on the first Black families to move into Co-op City. And Elba contacts me and says, I'm an Afro-Latina. Does that count? Can I be included in your study? And I said, of course. And she said, I think I know your father. And so, there we are. We hit it off immediately. And again, you're trying to do something professional and you're going into the work world professionally. And then you find another soulmate. And for me, it was a godmother, a titi, right? And many years later, Elba and I have stayed in touch. I'm very close to her entire family. She has basically adopted me as her goddaughter. And I'll give you her bio in a moment, but I want to, as a way of introducing her, tell you a little story about the last visit that she made to me in Washington, D.C. It was back in 2016. Around the time that the Smithsonian African American Museum just launched, and it was so hard to get tickets. And we were very fortunate to get tickets. So Elba took a bus and Amtrak and came down to DC, and we're all excited. And we were the first people waiting in line to get in. And we go and we spend the whole day in the Smithsonian. And we get to the floor where they're talking about music and entertainment. And it's just, I don't know if any of you have been to that museum. You cannot even see a quarter of it in one day. It is just a phenomenal.
And everything, right? You need a reservation.
It's phenomenal. I mean, right now it's not open, but it's so well attended, and it's such a phenomenal place. So we're on the floor with the music and everything, going on. And we see on the corner of our eye, we see an exhibit that says the Bronx. So of course we run over to it, and I'm with my mother, my husband, we run over, and all of a sudden Elba stands back and realizes that the photos in the exhibit are of her and her family.
Yes.
And then there's audio, right? Because it's a very interactive exhibit. You're hearing hip hop, music, photography, audio recordings of activism, and it's her sister. She's hearing her sister's voice, her late sister's voice, and she was just in shock. I was in shock. We were all in shock. No one knew. We had no idea, right? And so here we are, right? Many years later, when Elba came to me finding out about my research, because she is a mentor to so many people. She's known as the Madrina de los Artes, the Madrina of the Arts, right? The Godmother of the Arts for Latino activists and artists. And here we are many years later in the African American History Museum, honoring and celebrating this Afro-Puerto Rican Latina family. And we didn't even know we were doing that. So I would love to bring Elba up now. I'd love to introduce her. I'd love to welcome her. Hi, Titi. And thank you so much. She's calling in from the Bronx. And I just want to say, all four of us consider ourselves hermanas, titis, madrinas. None of us are related by blood that we know of, but we're sisters at heart. We are family at heart. And I'm just so honored and proud to be with you all tonight. And we are all Puerto Rican. We all look different. We all have a different story. And by way of that, I just want to welcome
New Rican.
And we're all New
Rican born in the Bronx.
And the Bronx.
Yeah, in the Bronx. Yeah. Elba, while she's getting that ready, I just want to say Elba is a very celebrated pioneering advocate for Puerto Rican and Latino artists. She was born in Ponce, Puerto Rico. And many years ago, she came to talk to my class at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, CUNY in New York City. And she shared that her family was one of the families that came over on a boat from Puerto Rico to New York. And her story is so remarkable that there was an exhibit about her family called La Tres Hermanas. And the story chronicled her and her beautiful sisters, who she'll talk about in a moment. She has a very storied history of accomplishments in her professional life. All her sisters were very well known in their field of study. And I don't want to steal Elba's thunder, but she is continuously being awarded honors and accolades, and awards are now named after her that are given to other people. An award was named after her recently for a Lifetime Achievement Award. So other people are getting awards in Elba's name. And this is all with the humble leadership that she shows to everyone, the love that she shows to people, the shared leadership that she brings to all that she does, the way in which she embraces you and makes you feel known and seen. And I think as women, we have to make sure that we make people feel known and seen. And Elba, we reconnected in 2006. I know you knew my family since at least 1973. And I just feel like I benefited the most from having that reconnection, right? You have been there for me with my mother. You've been there for me in my own life transitions. And I can't wait to hear and can't wait for everyone else to hear your beautiful and remarkable story. Welcome.
Time to share her with the world, Judy.
Yeah, and continue. So, Titi, how are you doing tonight?
A little nervous.
Oh, no.
Familia.
But I'm excited. I have my nieces with me too. She came to give me support.
Nice.
This is my oldest sister's daughter, and she's like a daughter to me now. But I do feel humble because so many good things have happened to me. I'm blessed. I am blessed with the people that came before me, and I'll talk about them. Once I'll follow your lead.
Yeah. Well, welcome to your sobrinas. Why don't we start, Titi? Why don't we start where you telling us about the roots of your family's activism? Because I think, I think that really helps kind of encapsulate why mentorship is so important.
Yeah. Well, I have to go back to when I was a little girl, and my sisters, Evelina and Lillian, were the ones at home with me and ones that I looked up to. But I have to go back further. my mother and my aunt, Tia Vicenta Godreau, was the first one to come to New York in 1923.
Wow.
Yeah. And 10 years later, she asked, she talked to my mother and wanted Evelina, my older sister, to come to New York. And that's how we all started to come here. My mother and my aunt worked in the Hotel New Yorker, in the laundry. The Hotel New Yorker was on 34th Street and 8th Avenue. Now I forgot what name it is. It's a different hotel.
That's near Penn Station.
That's exactly where it is.
Yeah.
And my mother worked there for 25 years. And the laundry in the hotel was in the basement, in the sub-basement. Wow. So she worked, very hard to make sure that her daughters went to school. And all she kept telling us was, all I want you to do is finish high school, because she had only gone to the sixth or seventh grade in Puerto Rico. And we went beyond that.
Beyond that.
Yeah, well, Evelina became political dynamite in New York. Lillian became a librarian, and she was also the administrator for the New York Public Library, the first Puerto Rican to be able to have that title. And then I was the youngest, and always looked up to them, thinking that I would never be able to do what they did. Oh. But they encouraged me so much. I mean, beginning with my aunt, my mother, and my sisters, that I have to say that if it wasn't for them, and if you talk about mentoring, those were my mentors. They were just there for me for everything. I really miss them, because they were my rock. But they're still my rock, because they're behind me. I could almost hear Evelina telling me, you better get to do that, girl, because she has not stopped encouraging me. Neither has my whole family. So I was the youngest. I was la nena de la casa. And now I'm la vieja de la casa.
I know. You are the la reina de la casa. You're the queen.
Well, thank you. I've just been very, very fortunate in my work. I first started working in the Lower East Side. That was a job that I had to the union, 1199. I have to tell you that I got that job after I went through so many interviews when I was in high school, and I was a good student. And because of my color and my ethnicity, I wasn't able to get those jobs. And I was really, 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 I cried. And my mother kept saying, don't worry, you're going to be okay. And Evelina was working, my sister Evelina was working for the union. And she says, come to the union. We're going to, recommend you to see what jobs you can do. I was very good at what I was doing, because I was a stenographer. And my typing was, forget it. Well, I went down to the union, and they sent me to the Lower East Side, and I got the jobs. I have to tell you this, because things turned out for me better at that time. When I went to work there, and all my other friends were working, they were earning so much. I forgot their salary, but I know that I started at 40-something a week, which was, it was something that people weren't getting. And I was also getting medical, the HIP plan.
Insurance. Wow.
Insurance. And that was at the very beginning of the HIP.
Wow.
So I worked for two companies for about 7-8 years, and then I got married. I met my husband and I got married. So I was home, and I was home for quite a few years. And then what happened was that my children were like 7. One was 7, and the other one was like 2. And Evelina says to me, she had just started her organization, and she says, "I want you to work for me. You could do it from home." So that's
Was that
how
the United Bronx Parents?
Yes, United Bronx Parents. So I started working for her at home. And then when all the programs started coming in during the anti-poverty programs, then I went to work. And by that time, my kids were much older. And I was with her for 13 years.
Oh, wow.
So that was working with the community on Prospect Avenue in the Bronx. And we did some wonderful things for the community.
What kind of mentorship work came out of United Bronx Parents? Tell us about that, because that was what was featured in the Bronx exhibit that we saw at the Smithsonian. There was a picture of your sister out of a window, and in the backdrop it said United Bronx Parents.
Oh, how it started? Or
no, well, what kind of mentoring? What kind of
with the
mentoring
youth
happened out of that organization?
Well, I think probably you could say we mentored youth, but mentored adults as well. There were many programs. We had about 9 programs during that time, and that was in the 70s. Mm-hmm. That was the early 70s.
Yeah.
And the mentoring was, we had the parent leadership program.
Mm-hmm. Parent leadership.
Where we have people from the community, teaching them how to stand up for their rights. Mm-hmm. The same thing, we had we called it a welfare program. It was women that were on welfare, and again, how to stand up for your rights. Mm. We had the youth program. We had a youth program where we had I think they were from 14 and up. And it was just a great feeling. We also started the summer lunch program. Mm-hmm. During the summers, where the children were able to eat. They had breakfast and lunches. And, that was all. We worked all over the city of New York. And how did we get that? Because nobody else wanted it.
Wow.
The feds had put it out, the proposal, and nobody wanted it. And Evelina and all the staff worked to get it, and we did. And once they saw people, other organizations saw how well we were running it, they wanted a part of it, a piece of the pie.
That's amazing, Elba. And so tell me more about the women that were involved in that became mentors, right? Because I think, the picture that we're talking about with the United Bronx Parents, that became a very famous photo. And I think it became a very famous photo because your sister was fighting for other people, right? Mentoring and fighting for other people. So let's talk about that a little bit. What led your family to go into mentorship, right? Why is that so important?
The funny thing is that you're putting a name on it, and we were doing what came naturally to us. Mm-hmm. So
you weren't calling it mentoring.
No. But the thing is that people have said to me, you've been my mentor all these years. And to me, I was doing something that was natural, something that came from my heart, because that's what I saw in my family.
I recall, working in the nonprofit sector in the Bronx. I worked in Casita Maria, at Wedco, and all these organizations that actually now are multi-million-dollar agencies. And I also worked for Hispanic AIDS Forum, which was actually right next door to United Bronx Parents for a little bit, off of 163rd under the L. And it was the combination of serving the community and mobilizing the community that I really think made it unique. And we in Orlando actually are still kind of putting in the infrastructure and the capacity for that kind of mobilization because it's a newly arrived community and there's a lot of diversity. But we look to organizations like United Bronx Parents and to advocates like you so that we could build a better, community here for the diaspora. So I just wanted to add that that activism was really critical in mobilizing those families and also in helping the diaspora become as powerful as it did in New York.
Yeah. Well, I could say this, that Evelina, my sister, she was a born leader. And because of her, many things changed. Bilingual education changed. Came in. I shouldn't say that it changed. Because of her work. And there were just so many things. I mean, the politicians would call her and ask for advice. I could tell you a story that I've told to other people, but it's always one of the ones that I hold on to. I was her secretary for many years, and one day I'm sitting in her office at my desk. The phone rings. I pick it up, and it's Mayor Lindsay's secretary calling, wants to speak to Evelina. She was on the phone on another call. So I said, hold on, please. And I put them on hold. And I said, Diti, I used to call her Diti, by the way. We all did. That was her nickname. Wow. Diti, the mayor's on the phone. He wants to talk to me. She says, he can wait.
Oh.
And I looked at her and said, that was her. I mean, she wasn't going to stop that phone call just because the mayor was on the phone. So I went back and I said to the secretary, she's on another call now, but she'll get back to him as soon as she's finished. Oh, that's fine. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. So then I hung up and after, she said, I'll call him now when I'm ready. And she did. And then she goes, hello, John. How are you?
Oh, wow.
But that was her. And I mean, all the politicians in the area would call her. And she did get this is another story. She got the name of the Hell Lady of the Bronx.
Hell Lady? Say it again.
Hell Lady of the Bronx. And you know who gave her that name? The police commissioner of the Bronx gave her that name. And they became friends.
Oh, wow.
Because, yeah. And she got
Hell Lady of the Bronx.
The Hell Lady of the Bronx. And she was.
Because she stood up.
That's an honor. That's an honor, yes. And I actually
call the Hell Lady.
Well, yeah, I actually have a reputation myself for being difficult, but it's because I get things done. And let's not forget what just happened to our Congresswoman AOC, right? And how she turned that around and said, you know what, the B word, bitches get things done. And so, it's not easy. It's hard to be a leader. You're not always going to be liked, but when you're an activist and you stand up for the right thing, you're not going to be popular among everybody,
Right.
And I'll give you another story because there's so many stories, but this one involves Lillian, my other sister. She was the librarian and later became an administrator. But during the, I guess under Koch, it was under Koch, Mayor Koch. The city was going through the budget. The budget was really low, and they were going to close all kinds of the libraries. They were going to close, and they were threatening all kinds of things. And my sister Lillian said to Evelina, she said, you could come to my library. She said, I'll be in the background, but you could come. And we were in that library for 2 weeks.
Oh my goodness. You had to sit in for 2 weeks.
2 weeks. We were at the Hunts Point Library. And I think they went to another one too, but Tremont. Anita just reminded me that the other one was Tremont. Wow. And let me tell you, we had fun and we read and we ate. We were there for 2 whole weeks.
Wow.
And
that's so
we made an impact.
That's right.
let me ask you a question, Titi. Given the examples you just shared, would you say that informed how you showed up for others? Tell us why you're called the godmother of the arts for Latinos, la madrina de las artes.
Okay. Well, what happened was that when I left, well, while I was at United Bronx Parents, I was also going to school. I went to SUNY at Old Westbury. I was 40 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And when I graduated, I was 44 years old.
Yes.
And I wanted to do something different from what I was doing. And my sister encouraged me. She says, I'm going to miss you because, you were there for me, but I want you to go out and do what you think you would like to do. So what happened was that there was an opening at the Association of Hispanic Arts, which was an arts service organization for the Latino community. And I got the job, and I was there for 10 years. I was there for 10 years, and that's where I met all the artists. So if you ever come to my home, you can see that I have all kinds of artwork on my wall, and many of them have become very famous. Manny Vega is one of them. Tato La Viera, who passed away, the poet. Miri Thomas. I mean,
Yes,
the list is pretty long. But because of that, and because I worked with, at one point at the association, we worked with 40 artists, and many of them became pretty famous and still look for me. And Tato and Wally Edgecombe were the ones that named me La Madrina de las Artes.
Oh, because that's a name that stuck with you,
Yeah.
right? I think a lot of it has to do not only of the support that you had to do formally in your role, but because of your spirit, Elba. You come from a family of people who encourage each other, who inspire one another, who take seriously the charge of caring for another person.
Oh, yeah.
So, we're going to wrap up now so we can move on to the musical segment. But I just want, I would love for you to end with some inspirational wisdom, word of advice. We have some young Latinas watching tonight. We have people of different faiths and backgrounds, not only Latinos on the show watching tonight. What word of wisdom do you have about feeling responsible to one another in our community? Why is that important?
It's important because when you look at the people around you, we have to support each other. We have to be there for each other. And could I give you an example about today?
Sure.
I was crying all afternoon morning and afternoon. I watched the funeral service for John Lewis.
For John Lewis, yeah.
And when the three, with all the speakers were wonderful, but I have to tell you that President Barack Obama was incredible, and the tears just flowed and flowed. And he said so many things that are so true that we have to carry that torch. We can't, and our children and our grandchildren have to carry that torch because so many have given their lives for, to be a better nation. And we just have to, be there for each other. So my advice to the young people is to go out there and be part of that community. Just don't go to school and say, bye-bye, see you later. Because if you come back and you help, you don't know the wonderful feeling you have inside your heart when you do things for other people. And that's how I see it.
Right. When you give back to other people, you benefit as well, right? And what I loved what you said, Elba, is we're not only doing it for our community, we're doing it for our nation. We're doing it for the world, right? It's so much bigger. We are a speck of dust in the constellation of this world. And everything that we do has a ripple effect. That's what I took away from your talk today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
for having me. It's been wonderful.
It's been an honor, and thank you. And hopefully we'll have you back. We'd love to have you back.
I said it's a plan.
Awesome. Okay, let's do it. I love it. I love it. Un placer. This is so inspirational, you know. When you come from the North, when you come from a more established community of Puerto Ricans that have political power, and you move to a place, and even you've expressed some of this as well, Judy, and maybe even Dinorah. Once you're in a place where that's still developing, or perhaps that's not the majority Latino, you know, community, right? Like where you are, for example, in DC. But we have so much work to do in Orlando, and it's happening. But I'm inspired by stories like Elba's, right? And her family and their activism, and, you know, the discrimination that they face based on race, you know, that, you know, when you went to the, you know, African-American History Museum, the Smithsonian in DC, and you see an exhibit not only of the Bronx, right, but featuring these three sisters that are Afro-Puerto Ricans. I mean, that's such a powerful experience. Of course, you're standing there with one of the sisters, so I can't even imagine what you thought. But, you know, that's just so powerful also as it relates to the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, and how we need to support each other. You know, I have a number of comadres just like you all that we've been on the phone, like, you know, my friend Sarah and her crew, and just thinking about how can we support this movement? How can we shed light on racism in our own community? You know, even on Bomba Live, we started talking about, you know, we of course, it was right in the middle of all the protests, and we certainly talked about it. And there's just so much work to do in that space, and so much to unpack. And institutions like United Bronx Parents and others are such a powerful vehicle for that activism and that mobilization and for that mentorship, right? Yep. So I just wanted to say that. There's so much more to say, but thank you so much, Judy, for bringing Elba to us, for sharing her with us. And someone that, you know, at your wedding, right? Like, this is someone who's family at this point. And we're so blessed, right? We're so privileged in so many different ways. But imagínate, like, that phenomenal woman is your mentor. You know, you phenomenal women are my mentors, right? How blessed are we? And that's why, to your point about when you do good, you know, you receive good. That's so important in my life. And I'm not sure, you know, again, I don't practice, but I'm certainly like in touch with, you know, I don't know. I think I'm a little bit of a Buddhist, a little bit of a Catholic, a little bit of a, you know, right? I certainly believe in giving selflessly, and that you receive in return. And that's why I think mentorship, even when it's not tied to professionalism, you know, it could be professional mentorship. You know, we don't see each other, you know, and sit in an office and do a professional mentor session, you know. You called me recently and said, you know, Zoe, I haven't checked up on you in a while, but I have a feeling you're being underutilized, that you're not doing the work that you should be doing. And I am so sorry. And, you know, so that's actually some of that led to some of the work, you know, the podcast and sharing experiences. So, Judy, tell us more about how you feel, you know, like having Elba on the show, your experience with mentoring, with being mentored by Elba.
Yeah, no, you know, it's just so incredible. And, you know, I also want to tell a little bit of a story about Dinorah, because I know she's bi-coastal right now, and it's the connectivity's hard. Dinorah and I, when we were in our program, we would have sleepovers, okay? And we'd be up until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning studying for our qualifying exams. Dinorah went to work the next morning at 8 a.m. Wow. She would drop me off in Co-op City. She was working full time. She would drop me off in Co-op City, and she would go to work. And I would say to her, how are you going to do that? We've been up all night. And, you know, seeing that kind of tenacity, seeing that kind of badassness, you know, it just, like, these are the kind of, you know, people, we don't know who's paying attention to us. which I think is the bigger thing, right? Dinorah had no idea. I know she remembers these sleepovers, right? Like we would, in her apartment in Yonkers, and we would just be up all night. We'd be like falling asleep on each other, right? And I would sleep, and then she would drive me home, and then she would go to work. And then like at 5 o'clock that night, she'd pick me up and bring me back to her house, and I would sleep over. We'd do it all over again. I never told you this, Dinorah, but when I saw that, I was like, there is no reason that I can't do this.
Right.
You know? And it's like, you don't know who's paying attention. You don't know what your actions are doing. Mm-hmm. You know, you just don't know, right? I just can't even explain it.
One of my best friends growing up, single mom, and even before then, she was working Dunkin' Donuts at 6 a.m. So we were, it didn't matter if we went hanging out the night before. She would come over to my dorm, at Barnard, whatever. And at 6 a.m., she was time to make the donuts, mm-hmm. and I saw her struggle with that and go to school and work. And I was, and also when I taught, and I got to teach because of you, Judy, right? You inspired me. That's another example, right? I got to teach for 8 years. I saw some of my students that were working full time, going to school at night. There were grandparents with addiction, raising their grandchildren. I mean, so when you hear these stories, when you see it and you don't know who's watching, you said, it makes you realize that there is no stopping us, right? And that we have a responsibility to give back and also to serve. So Dee, are you well connected there? Do you think maybe you could?
Everything that you guys are saying is so on point, because at the end of the day, I think I mentioned this earlier. I have a friend named Tanya. We win. When we all win, we all win. Mm-hmm. And it's about how do we make sure that allows it to be easier for people to win moving forward. And it's important for us to be there for one another and to lift each other up and to have those lift us up as we move through. And
so there are things that I shouldn't be doing. You're honest with me, and I think that's important. And sometimes I think when you're from New York, especially New Yorkers, we're like a special breed. And I had a
special breed of honesty.
Yeah. And some to some is intolerable, right? Like some people really don't like it. So when you come to
I get it from my mama.
We gotta do a whole session on our moms.
Yes, absolutely. But it's not always welcome. But I love when people are honest with me. Yeah. And that's part of mentorship is having difficult conversations and being honest with each other, and you don't always get that from the world, but I hope you get it from the people that love you. Right. And that's what I think is important in a relationship. So I know that we have a video clip of a performance, and, Elba is revered for her activism in the world of art. And so we wanted to share today a cultural performance. So we're going to be playing a clip from Maria Isa. She actually joined us for Bomba Live, the large Puerto Rican celebration that we did since we couldn't celebrate the Puerto Rican Day Parade. So we did this in June, and she came on, and she actually came on right before Dr. D and I had our segment, and she was phenomenal. And so when Ray asked me who we thought we'd want back, I said I'd love to have Maria Isa's clip. So she has this wonderful vibe. She's a Puerto Rican. She's I think that's the Puerto Rican. She's from Minnesota, right? She's an artist. Yeah. I just got that. I'm like, wait, Puerto Rican, what does that mean? Okay, so
is that a thing? Wow,
it's a thing now. Maria Isa made it a thing, and she's certainly yes, I love it. And she wrote this bomba song in honor of a personal friend of hers, which was George Floyd. So pretty powerful. And I'm going to go ahead and
Fuego que fuego. Si no pone la gente se va a quemar. Si no pone la gente se va a quemar. Fuego, fuego, Minnesota. Fuego, fuego, Minneapolis. Fuego, fuego para Jorge. Fuego, fuego para los nombres que han matado la policía, que se largan ya, que yo no quiero sufrir, mi gente negra no quieren más, no quieren no sufrir, que todos tenemos que vivir con unidad y no van a sufrir.
it's awesome to celebrate art, right? Celebrate our culture, of course. And then we have a young woman who's playing percussion. You don't see that every day. So those are all the different reasons for which I'm so impressed by her. I don't know if you guys, what did you think about Maria Isa, the Sota Rica?
Oh my God. I had goosebumps. And the fact that she sang that for George Floyd, may he rest in paradise, right? May his murder really teach us about solidarity and for standing up and being an upstander. I mean, her portrayal of him saying how much this hurts, right? Como duele, right? And acknowledging and honoring him in solidarity, lifting up his body, his spirit. I don't know, Dinorah, what do you think, honey?
Yeah, and it's, all about that African Caribbean through our roots musically, right? Because we are a musical culture. The bass and the way that it lays the background for some of the Afro-Latino conversations that we're even beginning to have as a result of what I think is really an important and subtle piece.
And, the way that we express our hearts through art, right behind me, the art that you see behind me, this is, the one photo, the art behind me of La Patria, where you can see right there, is a Puerto Rican artist named Tanya Lourdes. And she expresses the passion of the diaspora through her artwork, right? And I think that's what Elba stood up for. I think that's what her family stands for. I think art is an expression. I could tell you right now, living through this pandemic, the things that are getting me through are art, all different forms of art, spoken word, poetry, music, actual, like painting, sculpture, all of those things. Like that is what is going to sustain us and see us through. Literature, storytelling. This is a form of storytelling, right? It's such a oral history is such an ancestral thing that we do. We don't even realize it. It's passing down generationally, ancestrally, how to tell stories about one another and ourselves, right? We need to capture those stories. And I think what Maria Isa just did in display of that was
hieroglyphics and Taino symbols. And, we've always told our story through art.
That we have a unique history, obviously, but also unique experience in this country, right? As bicultural, first generation, multiracial people. And there's just such a unique experience of being a New Yorican, I have to say, in so many different respects. We could talk about family and gender, the choice to have a family or not, or have a traditional family or not. There's just so much to unpack. And that's why we wanted to have this Mujeres edition, led by, badass Puerto Rican women like ourselves, who have accomplished a great deal, but have a lot that doesn't define us. You know what I mean? Like, we're so multifaceted. There's so many layers, right? I still love, hip hop y merengue, and I love the I'm just such a eclectic person, if you will. And if you put on some soft rock, I'm good with that too, and alternative. And, I say I have a little inner white girl también, and, I'm very in touch with salsa, merengue, bachata, because I grew up with a ton of Dominicans around me, and so I feel like that New York experience is so único, and us, growing up in that environment where you consistently are fighting to survive. And so this idea of resilience, where, resilience is seen as a good thing, but there's a ton of burden that comes with that. That's not fair for folks. So we can unpack that. You guys are the sociologists, so I'll let the doctors unpack that, right? But that grit, right? It means for a great, work ethic. It's great for survival, getting through, necessarily for self-care. And that's where we need to hear from Dr. D, about work-life balance. And she's a life coach. There's just so much to talk about entre mujeres, right? So I think that kind of summarizes why we thought that we needed another section. Of course, it's Bomba Live. And I want to remind you that you should subscribe to Bomba Live. It's Bomba Live PR for Puerto Rico. If you didn't know, now you know. Bomba Live PR. You can find us on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, and anywhere pretty much where podcasts are available. So make sure to subscribe and support this project. And this podcast, we need more talent. We need more people on podcasts, story, and and more Latinos out there, kind of processing our experiences, highlighting our accomplishments, and talking about our challenges, because it's not easy out here, and I get it. So I want to get some last thoughts from you all before we wrap it up. Dee, I'm going to try to give you the opportunity first because I know it's been a little challenging with the audio. So let's see if we can have your final thoughts, and then Judy and I can wrap it up. We got the
I
1
think
minute.
that, my final thought would be, like you were talking about resilience. It really has the opportunity to build but it also has taken a toll. Our struggles do take a toll. And so I think phone call, text message to some of those mentors, those models.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dee. Dr. Dee, that is. Judy, last thoughts, epiphanies. How do you feel about this segment? What's your takeaway and what do you want to see in the next show?
Oh my God. So I think the main thing that I want to just emphasize is everybody that's listening tonight, please tell your story. Tell your story to people. Share, be vulnerable. Use your story to inspire others. For a long time, I think for all of us tonight, including Elba, talked about it. There were things that we were taught that society wanted us to be ashamed of. And as an adult in midlife, I'm not ashamed of my story. I'm proud of all the struggles, and I'm proud of the resilience that I built, even though the resilience came out of struggle, right? So I will continue to tell my story. I'm grateful for this platform. I tell my story also through comedy, through another platform called Mortified. And it's been on Netflix and Amazon, Mortified Nation. And I read my childhood diary on stage, and I'm one of the few Latina voices doing that, right? So I tell my story about growing up in the Bronx and all the crushes on boys that I had that never even knew I was alive. And I never thought I would share that. But you know what? When I tell that, it's a Bronx tale, right? It's not like the movie, right? But it is a Bronx tale, and it's a story that you don't hear. So whoever's listening tonight, if you've ever been ashamed of your story, I encourage you and I invite you to start telling it and to flip it. I learned that from Dinorah. She told me to think about another way of saying something. Think about another way of thinking things, right? That's her work as a life coach, right? How do we retell our stories in a way that empowers us and no longer shames us, right? Because we've got a whole world of stories to tell, and we need to start telling it. And that's also what I've been learning through this pandemic, and being reflective and honoring my voice. So that's what I would say tonight. And I think all of us in our own way, especially Elba sharing the story of her sisters, we all, I think, emphasize that tonight.
Thank you, Judy. Yeah, no, I share the same sentiments. Like I said, this is hopefully one of many shows where we can share some of our stories. And there's also some other phenomenal women on Bomba Live, by the way. There's Christine, there's Shirley, there's so many others that work with Ray. And they're actually going to have a ladies' night. So next Thursday at 8 p.m., they're going to also have a ladies' night with host Christina Vega, who I love and does amazing work with the survivors of domestic violence. And so I can't wait for us to, at some point, connect, right, and bring that issue front and center, because it's so important for us to process that and think about violence in our community. So Christina will be joined by makeup stylist Marilu, eyelash expert Jasmine De Jesus, mixologist Samantha J, and musical performance by Puerto Rican R&B singer Dinorah. Hopefully I said that correctly. So that's Bomba Live next Thursday at 8 p.m. So I hope you will join us. We're actually going to be coming together again next month, about 3-4 weeks from now. So we'll keep you posted. I hope you'll join us. Thank you so much for tuning in today, for leaving your comments, for being engaged. We will continue. And I hope the viewership will also continue to celebrate our culture and our diversity. I think we're going to have one more video before we end. But thank you so much, Dinorah and Judy, Dr. D and Dr. J. I don't know if you'll allow me to assign that, or but I can't wait to have you back. And Dr. D, I love what you do with coaching and everything you do around self-care. She has her own book. She didn't say this because she doesn't like talking about herself, but she's published a number of things, a number of work, and so has Judy. And so there's just so much talent.
Getting better.
Share it with you. We got to help you with that. So thank you again for tuning in, and have a great evening. See you in a few weeks, and please stay on so you can see the next video. Thank you, Ray, again.
Si no estás bailando con ella, salte. Si no estás peleando con ella, salte.
The guests on that are really making things happen, that got the buzz going. And for the last 7-8 days, whenever you drop that video, brother, you have been one of the biggest figures in my life, because every Latina I know is sharing it, saying, that's me. That's how I am in the car. That's my release. So there's a lot of people feeling you, brother. So I just want to congratulate you, because you have gone viral in a very positive way.
Oh, thank you. And that's the intention. The intention is to make, with all the tension that's happening right now around the world, I figure this is one of those opportunities that I like to take advantage of and spread a little bit of joy into people's lives. So it's the whole main purpose on why I do them.
Oh, well, you're doing a great job.
Thing is that freestyle was everything to me. My cousin Guido, who still lives in the Bronx, was the first one to introduce me and sneak me into the Copacabana. So it's kind of
kidding.
So
look at the screen.
Yeah, I mean,
Is that queso?
So Rosa,
it was the 80s.
Tell us about the Copa in the 80s.
No, actually, all I remember was dancing and always getting in trouble for breaking curfew. You know, it's just what it is.
I can't explain what I'm going through. Wish I could find the right words to say. Losing control and it's over you. Nobody else can make me feel this way. Could it just be that I'm curious and I want to make you play my game? But something tells me that it's serious, because I go insane when I hear your name. I'm hooked on you, yeah. Whoa, 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 whoa. I'm hooked on you, yeah. What can I do? It's over you.
Thank you.